Africa's independence and the harmony could only happen if we first of all look at what Marcus Garvey is saying. And Nkrumah then began to develop the interest in reading about Marcus Garvey, learning about Marcus Garvey. And so when you go back, same into his own autobiography, there's a place where Nkrumah stresses that when he was a young boy and a student in Lincoln University, he was reading some books. And all the books that he was reading, one of them that really impacted him most, and I read from page 45 of his autobiography, he says, but I think all of the literature that I studied, the book that did more than any other to fire my enthusiasm was Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, published in 1923. Garvey, with his philosophy of Africa for the Africans and his Back to Africa movement, did much to inspire the Negroes of America in the 1920s. It is somewhat ironical that the white Americans in the South supported Garvey in this movement of his. They did this not because they were interested in the emancipation of the Negro as such, but because they wanted to get rid of the black man from the South and felt that this would solve the Negro problem. It was unfortunate that I was never able to meet Garvey as he had been deported from the country before I arrived in connection with some kind of alleged fraud that he had gotten involved in. He eventually went to England where he died in 1940. So this is Nkrumah talking about Garvey. And he had wished that he would have had the opportunity to meet Marcus Garvey. So having not been able to meet him, he thought that reading his books, all right, made him knowledgeable about the philosophies and principles of Marcus Garvey. And Nkrumah felt that Garvey's message was the right approach for the African to search for his independence, his freedom, his right as a human being. And Nkrumah stuck to it. And from his autobiography, he tells us that it is the reason why, amongst all the books that he read, he found Garvey's to be the most influential one, even though he didn't have the chance to meet him. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Now, do we know, according to your research, is there something that we can hold on to that Kwame Nkrumah did while he was in the diaspora? I don't know. Of course, we know that they organized a lot of conferences and things like that because before he moved down, both the group that came to Nigeria, the group that went to other parts of Africa, because this is not something that happened in 1 year or in 2 years. This is a kind of a revolution that took place for a lot of time. They connected from the US to the UK, they organized conferences, talk about a lot of things, no? Because they were young people that had really the blood of revolution burning and really bubbling in there. So is there something that you find that maybe we don't know that they did, a kind of a work or a symposium of relevance that you can touch while they were seeing the diaspora studying?
Yes, thank you, Obehi. And it's what you are saying is very right, because we have to know that Rome, as the saying goes, was not built in 1 day. The efforts of these young Africans did not, I mean, it was not GMO'd. And when I mean GMO'd, I mean it didn't start at a go. It didn't happen at once. It was a gradual processes of engagement. And I'll read to you an account. And this account is from a man called Akweje. You know, when you come to Ghana, we talk about the Big Six. Now, the Big Six are seen as those who spearheaded Ghana's fight for independence. One of them is called Akweje. Now, Akweje was also an American student. He was Nkrumah's bosom friend. In fact, when the United Gold Coast Convention in Gold Coast, as at 1947, was looking for someone to become the general secretary of that movement, it was Akweje who suggested or recommended Nkrumah, who was by then still in America. So Akweje is at the heart of all this discussion. Now, he has an unpublished memoir. There's an unpublished memoir that he has, and I have a copy here. Let me read to you some of the discussions that these guys were having. And it was not just, Ghanaian students. These were also Nigerian students who were involved in this, because Lincoln University was a black university to enroll young Africans, young black students, and educate them. So that is why you find most of these young Africans from the colony going to Lincoln University. And that place was a citadel of knowledge where they could engage themselves to see how best they can struggle and fight for Africa's independence. So let us look at what Akweje says in one of his engagements with Nkrumah. He says that at Lincoln University, all right, I registered for courses in political science, economics, sociology, English, Latin, and philosophy. It should be mentioned at this stage that about 1 week after I had arrived at Lincoln University and had met Mr. Francis Njia Kofi Nkrumah, about 9 students also arrived at Lincoln University from Nigeria. They came to Lincoln University on the inspiration of Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. The names of these students were Mr. Imbonu Ojike, Mr. Kingsley Ozomba Imbadiwe, Mr. George Imbadiwe, Mr. Okechukwu Ikejani, Mr. Inodu Okunko, Mr. Inwafo Orizo, Mr. Chukwu Emeka. These were Igbo students, some of whom held scholarships awarded to them by Dr. Azikiwe. The others were Mbaka Ababiu and Mr. Idion, who came to Lincoln University on scholarships awarded them by the Igbo Union. Another student was Mr. Abdul Karimu Disu, a Yoruba from Western Nigeria, who was at Lincoln University on scholarship awarded to him by Nnamdi Azikiwe. And now listen to what he says. Quite often in the evenings, after we had all had our evening meals in the dining hall of Lincoln University and had returned to our respective rooms in the halls of residence, we used to meet in the room of Mr. Francis Njia Kofi Nkrumah at Houston Hall and engage ourselves in the long heated discussions about emancipation of our respective African countries from colonial domination and how we should all of our respective African countries from colonial domination and how we should all work together to attain national independence for our people when we finish our studies and return home. Now, and then he goes on to say that Mr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah used to tell us that he had been thinking and dreaming about the establishment of a United States of Africa. The idea or dream presupposes the end of colonial domination. So I'm just trying to give us an idea of what was happening as far back as 1937.